You can hear me?
Perfectly. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and thank you, Councillor Hardwick. I'd first like to acknowledge the ancestral lands of the Lekwungen speaking people whose beautiful lands I have the pleasure of living and working on. Thank you for having me here. Oh, my screen just went, there we go. My screen skipped a few there. And I'm going to go back to who we are. The Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation is actually located in Ottawa, but I have the opportunity to work from your time zone in beautiful British Columbia. I joined the foundation as president and CEO about 2 months ago, but I've been involved with their work for many years. I do have an audit background going back, I hate to say it, about 40 plus years. I was city auditor in Winnipeg. I was provincial auditor, then Auditor General for the province of Manitoba, and most recently retired in January as Auditor General of British Columbia. So I wasn't involved in the writing of this report, but I have been through it in detail. And when I refer to the report, the foundation report, I understand the issues and I do support the recommendations they've made. I reviewed the proposed bylaws and the 2 committee terms of reference, and I would confirm to you that they do sufficiently address the key areas in the foundation's report. Councillor Hardwick's mentioned the municipalities that were included, but it does include specific information about the Halifax Regional Municipality, Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. The authors were Dr. Leslie Burns, who's the Director of Oversight at the Foundation, James Olton, Senior Governance and Research Officer at the Foundation, and of course, John Reid, the former President and CEO. The project advisors were the Auditors General for the cities of Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, the current and former Auditor General for Halifax Regional Municipality, and Gordon Ruth, the Auditor General for local government here in BC. The Chief Risk Officer, Chief of Internal Audit and City Manager for the City of Vancouver, along with an external consultant, were also interviewed. Public sector auditing involves several different audit types and models that exist in Canada. In terms of types, it can be thought of as a financial statement audit, performance audit, and other types of compliance work. The model can be thought of as who the auditor is and where they are positioned in the jurisdiction's governance regime. Auditors General at the federal and provincial level in Canada audit the financial statements or the public accounts, as well as doing performance audit work. Municipal auditors generally focus on performance audits. In my view, they should also help council understand what the financial statements are telling them. The report that we issued emphasizes there is no blueprint for implementation. So it is important to focus on the key factors, which you've done. That is independence from those you audit, reporting to council, an arrangement that appoints someone qualified to do the job, and an oversight arrangement to use the office's good work and make sure the suggested improvements are implemented. I'll just turn your attention quickly to the Foundation's report on page 41, and there is a section on special consideration, the internal audit division. The report states that, driven in part by concerns over potential duplication of effort and the cost of having both organizations, questions have arisen as to whether the internal audit division should be merged with the Auditor General Office in Vancouver, retained as is, or eliminated altogether. And the report emphasizes these are difficult decisions that require detailed research and investigation. So the report does not go into that detailed research and investigation. It does conclude that combining the 2 roles and functions into a single organization is unsound and shouldn't be pursued. But the main considerations are there is a big difference between the 2 roles. Who you report to and are independent from, it does drive the lens you use to identify items of risk and significance, therefore what you're going to audit. Management still needs to determine how it will use internal audit for its work, and the Office of the Auditor General needs to determine the extent to which they will rely on the internal audit work and reduce theirs accordingly and serving the needs of council. I'll add that the relationship between internal audit and the Auditor General's office is a very important one. At the province, my staff and I would meet regularly with internal audit staff. I attended Deputy Minister Audit Committee meetings on occasion when invited. We shared our overall plans, and I sent them some of our detailed risk assessments to avoid duplication, so that sort of thing. The downside was when they posted for vacant positions and hired my staff away from me. The upside was that we hired good staff from them as well. The Auditors General are a feature of the Westminster democratic parliamentary system. They exist in virtually all Commonwealth countries at the national, provincial, state, and increasingly at the local levels. It recognizes that spending doesn't stop at the federal or state provincial governance border, and increasingly program delivery is not only at the municipal level, but also when grants are given out at any level to a not-for-profit or a for-profit organization. The Auditors General should be able to follow the dollar. Now, the strongest models out there allow the Auditor General to audit all agencies, boards, commissions, crown corporations, grant recipients with that access set out in legislation. Not all Auditors General can do this at any level of government. In fact, the foundation is about to publish a research piece on that very topic. Your bylaws don't go as far as open access, and it is something I would suggest you consider in the future. The size of the office, in my view, the final size of the office, its constructive relationship with the internal audit division, with management and with council, and the final structure of the two organizations with internal audit should be something the appointed Auditor General would be ideally suited to discuss with you. I do agree that there should be a cordial relationship and coordinate the work. There was a book written many years ago about the Auditor General of Canada. It was called Cordial but Not Cozy, and it's a mantra that I always used in my work. Though the world is changing rapidly, the Auditor General may want to have less staff and more subject-specific contractors. On the other hand, there may be enough work to be done in, say, IT audit to have a senior IT auditor on staff, and they do come with an associated high price tag. So working through the budget would be important for them to do. The Auditor General position is not simply that name is not simply a job title. It is a model of public sector audit that carries expectations for its design and ongoing practice, and it is backed by professional standards. The specific standards evolve. There are Canadian, I think I actually skipped a slide here on you. There are Canadian Audit and Accountability Standards. The Institute of Internal Auditors issues standards, and internationally, Intosai does so as well. So the reference in the bylaw recognizes the need for structured audits using standards, but it does leave enough room for that evolution, and it doesn't limit the Auditor General to one specific thing. The Auditor General model for public sector audit is well-defined and time-honored, and the most fundamental characteristic and principle of the model is the independence. In calling for the creation of an independent Auditor General for the City of Vancouver, you have already accepted the importance it places on independence. So Council's choice of the Auditor General model also has implications, as you've seen, for its oversight role. The foundation report gives specifics, but around various matters like the size and so on. But the final staff number, it does make sense to leave it up to the Auditor General, of course, with council approval ultimately. The fixed term of 7 years non-renewable does allow the auditor to speak truth to power without fear of reprisals. There is some practical guidance in the report, which you've already gone through, around using city support services where it's practical to do so at the Auditor General's discretion. So I won't go through the pathway, just acknowledging that the hiring of the right person is very important, and the final details can certainly still be worked out. The report summarizes, as pointed out by Councillor Hardwick, the comparative office sizes. It does, in terms of the salary level, It emphasizes in the report, and I would concur with that it should be at a senior executive level that would reflect the breadth of the work. You do need to be able to audit any municipal department or delivery organization. It would be based on the existing market for somebody with that background. The credibility of the office is very important, and important to link it as closely as possible to some other position, because if it is subject to negotiation with management or on an annual basis, that does form a risk to the independence. In British Columbia, the Auditor General at the provincial level was at, or still is, at the level of a chief judge, which is higher than the deputy minister, so I'm not actually suggesting you do that. More common for the municipal auditors than other layers, than auditors in the provincial and federal level, but to track cost savings from audits. It's actually a pretty controversial topic. Not all municipal auditors general agree that it should be a requirement. It's my personal position that yes, they should look for those savings. The public sector work in municipalities would generally result in audits that could identify savings, things around construction projects, for example. But it isn't necessary to require it in the legislation or bylaws, as it is very difficult to measure, and it shouldn't overshadow other topics that may be selected, such as quality of service. So again, it's just something to keep in mind as this progresses. The decision has important implications, as pointed out already, but for the role and mandate of City Council itself. City Council becomes the oversight body for the Auditor General's work, and oversight by elected bodies is an important part of the Auditor General model and of demonstrating accountability. In many municipalities, it is exercised by a committee of council, commonly known as an audit committee, which is what you're proposing to do. At the federal and provincial level, it somewhat parallels the Public Accounts Committee. It does have a different dynamic, of course, at the city. The roles that would be the same would be that the audit committee reviews the audit reports, asks management for action plans to address recommendations, and then follows up with management and the auditor to see that the recommendations have been implemented over an appropriate timeline. And so you've seen already where this takes you in the pathway, and it is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bellringer.